Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head over to the Netherlands once again, and I've got a beer from quite an interesting brewery. So we're going to go to the city of Haarlem, which is to the west of Amsterdam, almost right on the coast in fact, and we're going to have a try of one of the Jopen Biers, and this one is called Hoppenbier, and it's a 6.8% blonde beer, supposed to be quite an interesting one. So I have to give a shout out to Derek at Hippo Beers in Glasgow, really nice beer shop along near the university, so do go and check it out. His Facebook page is in the video description for you below. He helped me pick out this beer, and I also have to give a shout out to my loyal Dutch follower Stevie. I always wonder how he remembers how many E's is in his name when he logs in, but he really enjoys the Dutch beers and he actually recommended that I have a look at Jopen, so a shout out to him for that, and I hope it's a good beer. But anyway, as is usual with my beer reviews then, I'll take you through a very brief history of the brewery. It will only be a minute or two long, but if you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. The brewery website's in the video description for you below, along with a link to my other reviews that I'll do from Jopen in the future. The brewery website incidentally is available in Dutch and in English, and you'll also find below links to my Untappd profile and my Facebook page too, so feel free to connect with me through there. But anyway, Jopen are from Haarlem in the Netherlands, to the west of the capital city of Amsterdam, like I told you. But the Jopen Bier was originally produced by the Stichting Haarlem's Biergenootschap, and apologies if my Dutch pronunciation is wrong there, but basically this organisation is the Haarlem Beer Appreciation Society, and they were founded back in 1992. But the motive of this organisation was basically to recapture some of the ancient beer recipes of Haarlem to commemorate the city's 750th anniversary and return them to the current market. But the two beer recipes that were produced initially were found in the Haarlem City Archives, and the first of these dated from 1407, and it entered the name entered the market under the name Koit, and it was brewed initially at Leuven University in 1995. So the beer was officially called Jopen after the original wooden barrels that used to ship the beer in the past, and the official company Jopen Bier was established in 1996, and the beer production actually moved around quite a bit in the early days. Initially the beer was brewed at Half Man Brewery in Hulst, then it moved to La Trappe Brewery, of course the Dutch Trappist Brewery in Berkel Enschot, then it moved to Ertvelde, which is the home of Van Steenberg Brewery, and more recently they've actually moved into Haarlem, so the beer is brewed in Haarlem for you today, and the current Jopen brewer is Chris Visse. So in 2005 it was announced that Jacobskerk in central Haarlem would be transformed into a brewery, and this was to be occupied by Jopen, and it opened its doors to the public in 2011, and it's also home to the brewery cafe and restaurant too. But in 2013 they actually had to build a new production facility in the Waardepolder industrial park, basically to meet the international demands for their beer, so they are starting to export, and this is the general trend for Dutch beer now. For a long time Dutch beer was kind of ignored in favour of Belgian and German beer, and it's often a shame for the Netherlands, because I find that the quality of the beer that comes out of the Netherlands really is excellent. So it's really cool that we're starting to see things like Ruïdop, Oorschap, Jopen and Capsa, and all of these breweries starting to actually come out into the other countries around the world. The Dutch beer really is good, so if you haven't tried it, look up some of the breweries and have a look there. If you search Netherlands in my YouTube channel, I've reviewed quite a few Dutch beers now, so do check it out and you will get an idea of what's available there. But anyway, that's your brief history of the brewery itself. So just to list the other beers you can get from Jopen Brewery, there's Hoppenbier, Gerstenbier, Koit, Doubting Thomas, North Sea IPA, Malababa, Jacobus RPA, Extra Stout, Adrian Wheat Beer and Trinitas Triple, and in their seasonal range they have the Lentebier, Johannetier and the Four Granen Bock. So you'll find those three at different parts of the year, but they do have a fairly extensive regular range of beers too. So let's actually get into the tasting of this beer then. Should be a very nice one for us to try. I'll just bring up the camera and let you have a little quick look at the artwork before we open it up. So this is the standard Jopen label. They're all the same, but except for the fact that they're different colours depending on what beer that you're buying. So this one is from says recipe 1407, so that's obviously a reference to the Koit beer that they produce. This guy, as I told you, is a 6.8% blonde beer. You can see the Jopen bottle cap on the top there, and that has the Jacobskerk, or Jopenkirk as it's been renamed by the Haarlem locals. And it should be a very nice beer. Stevie actually seemed he was quite adamant that I should try this brewery, so quite keen to take his recommendation with this one and have a go at it. But it comes in with 40 IBUs, 6.8%. I do have the hop profile here, and it said it was using Hallertau Mittelfrüh hops, so it should be a very nice one for us to try. So let's get stuck into this beer. Quite excited to have a go at it today. So yeah, as you can see, a nice smoky opening. I'll just put my bottle cap there. But you can actually smell, it's quite an interesting kind of citrusy and grassy aroma that's coming off it, but you can smell some of that typical yeasty characteristic. The Dutch beers are always interesting, of course, because some of them brew the Belgian styles of beer, but quite a few of them as well do a mixture of the Belgian styles and some of the American ones. And I've seen some brewers even doing the likes of English styles and even some German beers as well. So the Dutch really are starting to get into this whole craft beer scene, which is obviously very good. So as you can see, this beer is poured a really kind of bright yellowy orange amber. It's got a finger, half a finger roughly, of a frothy white head there. There's a little bit of sediment just in the bottom of the glass there, but very, very fine particles. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass there, and a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head. But it looks very, very attractive beer. It actually looks a bit like a wit beer or an IPA, an American IPA or something like that. But very attractive looking beer. So let's give it a smell and see how we get on here. It's actually really quite an unusual aroma. It's got a big bready and yeasty note coming out of it, and there's a definite wheaty, sort of slightly spicy presence to it as well. But there's an unusual kind of fruity character to this one. It reminds me a little bit of Groot. When I did the Gentse Staatsbrouwerij from Belgium, it had this kind of unusual, slightly fruity aroma, and it reminds me of some of these Groot beers. So it's got a little bit of a lemony citrus and a grassy floral hop, but there is almost a kind of limey quality and a slightly herbal aspect to the aroma of the beer too. So it's quite interesting in that regard. Just take a bit of time, as I always say, just take a little bit of time and smell your beers before you actually try them. But a big bready and yeasty characteristic coming off this beer, which is what you would expect of a sort of Belgian-y style blonde beer. But a definite wheaty presence, a little bit spicy in fact. A small amount of kind of caramel, slightly toffee sweetness, but that's very mild, I would say. But a lemony and citrusy kind of floral hop in the background there. And I do want to say there is a little bit of a limey character coming out of this one. And maybe a little bit of the kind of herbal aspect. It really does remind me a bit of the Groot beers, and I've been told that they do use Groot in some of the beers. That's of course these herbal hop substitutes actually that they use in brewing. But yeah, it's definitely quite interesting in fact. So let's give this guy a taste. So this is the Hoppenbier from the Jopen Brewery in Haarlem in the Netherlands. I'll give a shout out to Stevie. Proust. That's really interesting, that. Not like any sort of blonde beer I've had before. It's definitely interesting, this. You get a nice kind of light bready and yeasty character for this one that just blankets the middle of your tongue there. There is a little bit of a kind of slightly spicy wheat presence in this beer, and it's really quite nice in fact. But that kind of Grooty aroma, it doesn't have such a kind of Groot taste in it, this beer. But it's nice. It is nice. It's not like any kind of blonde beer I've tried before. It's almost like a halfway point between a blonde beer and a wit beer, if that makes sense. It's almost a little bit in the middle of that. It does have a component of this kind of big, bready, yeasty character that you would expect from a wit beer, but at the same time it has some of the more hoppy aspects that you would expect of the blonde beer, and there is a kind of underlying slightly caramelly sweetness to this one, but that's quite mild in fact. So as I always say, just spread the beer around your mouth a little bit, and that helps all your taste buds just adjust to this beer. But yeah, no, I would say that it's got a nice bready and yeasty malt base there. There is a little bit of a spicy wheat character that just builds on top of that. You can feel the dryness just building up in the middle of your palate there as you progress through the beer. It just gets a little bit dry. But yeah, around the edge of the tongue, you do have quite a nice, smooth, grassy hop character there. It is a little bit floral, but at the front of the tongue, you're getting a nice, juicy, kind of lemony citrus there. I'm not picking up some of the kind of limey flavours that I was expecting since I had smelled them in the aroma, but it's got a nice, juicy, quite lemony citrus, and the flavours in this beer do blend together really well, actually. But as I say, it's like no wit beer or blonde beer that I've had before. It's almost like some kind of middle ground between those two styles. But it's actually, the mouthfeel is actually quite juicy on the top of the tongue. That lemony citrus kind of builds just on, you just get this oily bubble that kind of spreads forward on your tongue there, and that gives you this nice juicy lemony citrus flavour in there. It's really quite nice, actually. I do want to say there is an element of that kind of grooty herbal character to this beer as well, and it's quite an unusual flavour to pick up if you haven't tried beers that have groot in them before. It's not, it's a kind of slightly spicier or slightly more herbal probably slightly more earthy herbal character to the beer is a good way to describe it, and there is a definite element of that around the back edges of the palate there. You can pick up just this slightly herbal flavour in the beer, but it's very nice actually. The flavours blend together really well. That kind of slightly, very lightly earthy herbal character helps build the bridge between the kind of wheaty and bready yeasty characters in the middle of the tongue out towards the smoother grassy hops. It builds a nice bridge to this beer. But in terms of the mouthfeel of this one, I would say it's quite mid-bodied. The carbonation is very smooth. It does have a bit of an oily character to the beer as well, and that kind of oily bubble you get behind the very front of your tongue helps the kind of nice citrusy flavours build out a little bit. But it's a little bit spicy. There is a bit of wheat spice in the middle of the tongue. That gives you a bit of dryness. Around the front edge of the tongue, once you move into the aftertaste, you get a little bit of dryness from the grassy and floral aromatic aspects of the beer. And but around the back edges, it's a nice, smooth, quite wet, grassy character. But it's a little bit bitter, but very light in comparison with some of the beers you're going to come across. But overall, it's a really nice and quite interesting beer, you know. If I found myself in Haarlem and was wanting to go out and drink a few beers, then this is a good one to go with, although since I've only tried one of the Jopen Biers, I would want to try a few of the others as well and see what they're like. But this is a really nice beer, and I wouldn't hesitate to drink it again if I was offered it. So yeah, do go and check out the Jopen Brewery from Haarlem in the Netherlands. Very nice beer for my first tasting here. I hope those of you watching in the Netherlands have enjoyed this beer review, and indeed all the Dutch beers reviews that I've done for you over the last little while. As always, let me know in the comments section below your own thoughts on this beer. Do go and check out the brewery website if you want to learn a little bit more about them. Until my next beer review, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Your support on the channel is much appreciated. Hopefully I can get back and do some more Dutch beer reviews for you fairly soon, and hopefully I can return to Jopen. I do have one from Lindeboom that I need to review for you soon, so do stay tuned for that. But until my next beer review from the Netherlands, Proost.